Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah insider for KSL Sports. Good to be with you on a Wednesday. We'll get right to it. On today's episode, I welcome on OC Register's Benjamin Royer to talk UCLA, all things UCLA. And, I thought he was really insightful in terms of what to expect from the UCLA Bruins and DeShaun Foster in year two. We talked through most position groups and have a good feel of the names and who we might see on Saturday night. So really interesting stuff from Royer, and who did a great job, and I thought was really insightful on a number of different things. Now, with today's episode dropping a little bit later than normal, I want to remind everybody we're going live with the Utah Blockcast Live. We're going live, and it's going to be available on YouTube. So we're going to live stream from the Utah Blockcast account, and then that will be available if you miss it, if you don't want to tune in while we're live. That'll be available on the podcast tomorrow as well. So be looking for that. Geez, it's a Wednesday for sure. But appreciate everybody for tuning in, supporting during those live sessions. It's always fun, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun on that one, on the one tonight. So Josh is going to be joining me tonight, and we'll have a lot of fun. So make sure to tune in 8 p.m. We'll be going live, and again, that'll hit the feeds pretty instantly at 8 p.m. So looking forward to that. And again, it'll be available tomorrow as well. But without further ado, let's get to Benjamin and our conversation last night about the UCLA Bruins. All right, and joining me now, Benjamin Royer of the OC Register. Benjamin, man, appreciate you taking some time to hop on the Utah Blockcast. It's obviously exciting time. Game week is here. Week one of the 2020 opportunity. A big game for Utah and UCLA. Night game in the Rose Bowl. Just fantastic. I think everybody's excited and chomping off the bit. So excited to have you on to talk a little UCLA Bruins for us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on, Steve. I'm excited for the game, excited to talk about football.
Yeah, so, obviously introduce you, OC Register. Where do people, how did you essentially get into the game, and where can people find your work?
Yeah, so I'll just share a fun fact about me. I was a Disney Channel actor, so I've been telling stories my entire life.
Nice.
So when I got into community college, I started doing newspaper stuff. That led to me transferring to UCLA, where I was a student. I wrote for the student newspaper. Utah folk might like this. I covered gymnastics. That's like my niche beat that I've kind of built for myself. And UCLA, Utah, big gymnastics rivalry. So
yeah,
if you're seeing some of my journalism, I go take a look at some of my gymnastics stuff. I did a master's program at USC last year, and I started freelancing for the Los Angeles Times, where I'm still actually freelancing. And then I'm now the UCLA sports correspondent for the Orange County Register on a contract. I'm really excited to be doing that. Excited to cover UCLA sports. I've been watching it my entire life. If I'm more educated about any of the things that I watch and have looked at, UCLA's up there. So looking forward to the season and all the coverage.
Awesome, man. That's great. So let's dive into UCLA. I think everybody's kind of interested to see these two teams because there's some similarities in terms of the roster reconstruction, the coaching changes that have been made, and sort of what each program is rebuilding going into 2025. So let's start big picture and then work our way throughout the roster and all of that. So let's start with DeShaun Foster, and I think with him going into year two, tough year last year, but I think I was impressed by the way that UCLA continued to compete late in the season. I think that always speaks highly of a coach and the buy-in that he gets. But I would be curious, and I know that there's a lot of frustration with media access in fall camp and practice and that sort of stuff. But just in general, what's sort of the vibe around Foster as he goes into year two, and sort of the outlook with him in the program?
Yeah, first I'll say I think the honeymoon phase is probably over at this point. I mean, getting a guy like DeShaun Foster into, when you decide you're going to hire a former player, a player that people love to watch, and then a player people loved when he was an assistant coach. He took the Las Vegas Raiders job to be the running backs coach and then immediately jumped back to UCLA to be the head coach. never even got to Vegas to be their running backs coach. So, this is a dream job for DeShaun, and 5-7 last year. I think if most UCLA fans were probably pretty pumped about that. Every program wants to win a lot. But DeShaun is, he's not a very raw coach vibe. I always point to Lane Kiffin, watching USC and UCLA football growing up. You see a guy like Lane Kiffin, that guy's going to be yelling and getting his guys ready for a game. DeShaun might do that in the locker room, but when he's in front of the cameras, he's a lot more humble and quiet. He had his little Big Ten media gaffe last year, but you saw him this year and he was a lot more composed. He had prepared statement. He looks a lot more comfortable in this head coach role. And then, bringing in Tino Sunseri, knowing that Eric Bieniemy wasn't really working out, those are the type of things you're going to have to do if you're a head coach. So I think with DeShaun, I think there's some optimism, especially with how recruiting has gone, high school recruiting, especially with the 2026 class. So I think there is some excitement brewing for DeShaun, but I think he's going to need a winning record to keep that excitement going, especially for a fan base that got really tired of Chip Kelly once they realized that the peak was they weren't going to exceed an 8-win peak, really.
That's interesting. And you brought up Sunseri, and that was a big change, the big change. One of the big changes that Foster made this season. And I'd be curious, he's been on the job, for, about 8 months, 9 months, whatever it is. And I would just be curious, how would you assess how things have gone so far with him, installing the offense and creating an offensive identity and all those sort of things?
Something a lot of the players have said is that the team's going to be elusive, quicker. And I think one thing that I'll point to is, can't remember which player said it, but they said with Eric Bieniemy, you were learning a lot of words. He loved really extensive plays that kind of forced you not to play a no-huddle offense because it took a lot of information to understand which play you were running. So Tino Sunseri has kind of pushed a quicker identity. He wants to be more balanced with the pass and run game than Eric Bieniemy was. And it seems to be more of a traditional college football offense that we're going to see, fast-paced, exciting. So far, everyone I've talked to in the program absolutely loves the guy. But it's also important to realize he wasn't calling plays at Indiana last year. He was the co-offensive coordinator, but he wasn't calling plays. So this is his first true opportunity to call plays and be the leader of an offense. Something that personally I love to see is he's a former college quarterback, played at Pitt. He's passing the ball sometimes out there. I mean, he looks like he could still be playing football. So I think there's an excitement within the program of the youth and the ideas that he's bringing to the table. I don't want to compare, but he reminds me of Cliff Kingsbury a little bit. Like just the excitement people around him seem to have, the ideas he's bringing to the table, how much the quarterbacks seem to enjoy being around him. Those things can go a long way. And then, lastly, I think every year that Tino Sunseri has been a quarterback's coach or a co-offensive coordinator, he's had a different quarterback. So, some bringing in Nico Iamaleava into the program. I'll refer to him as Nico for the rest of the podcast so we can just, not have to pronounce his last name. There doesn't seem to be any fear with the idea of not having much time to get ready for a season with Nico coming in at the end of the spring after spring practices. So overall, I think if we're going a preseason, how do people look at Tino Sunseri? I think people are excited about Tino Sunseri, especially with how dire things looked at the end of Eric Bieniemy's tenure as offensive coordinator last year.
We'll get to a little bit more Nico Iamaleava in a little bit, but I would be curious, just what have you seen of Sunseri's offense and what is sort of like, what sort of identity is he trying to build? Do you feel like it's going to be, a run heavy offense or do you feel like it's going to be geared more towards the quarterback and airing it out a little bit?
Yeah, no, I would love to say I have a clear picture of what the offense is going to look like right now. The practice access we've got lately, we see one play of one walkthrough, and then they have us turn around and look the other way for the rest of the walkthrough period of practice. So I've seen one play a fair bit since they've returned to Westwood. And when we were in Costa Mesa for the fall camp, we saw a full walkthrough period, but all of those plays, even now as we see them, are all goal line packages. So we're not even really sure what the offense is going to look like. It's going to be more balanced. The way DeShaun Foster and Tino Sunseri and the players have talked about it, seems like a lot more players are getting involved. I mean, multiple tight ends on the field, multiple running backs getting involved, end arounds, wide receivers running the balls, tight ends running the ball, more like as a fullback type role. I mean, I think there's just going to an exciting mix of doing different things. I think Tino's going to bring a more fluid, balanced identity than necessarily airing it out long or ground and pound. I know with specific teams, they might push different directions. I mean, that's just a game by game basis, but it seems like they want to pass and run kind of in a similar amount this upcoming season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Utah's kind of in the same boat with their offense and what they're trying to build. Obviously, under Kyle Whittingham, that running the ball is going to be the focus and all of that. But I do think they want to be balanced as well. So, let's get back to the conversation with Nico, right? Because he arrived at UCLA after a highly criticized departure from Tennessee. How's he been received and what are sort of the expectations for him going into the season?
I think first off, people have to realize is that UCLA fans are not really used to having such a highly touted quarterback. I don't know if you remember 2 years ago when Dante Moore committed to UCLA, decommitting from Oregon, and then it was kind of a shock decision for him to sign with UCLA. People were all in on the Dante Moore train. I think it's very similar with Nico here. If there was any backlash to how he got from Tennessee to UCLA, in the UCLA fan community, it's silence. No one really would care about that aspect of it. The idea of you have the number one recruit, according to some recruiting websites, of his recruiting class coming into play at UCLA, I think people are quite excited. And it's not like when Dante Moore was here, he was competing with Ethan Garbers to be the starting quarterback, and then they ended up sharing time. Nico is far and away the obvious QB number one. It's never been a question if he was QB number one. So that aspect of it, people love him. I think expectations wise for UCLA to be good and, in my opinion, have a winning record, he's going to have to play to a very high quality, maybe even a little better than he did at Tennessee. He had better weapons at Tennessee last year than I think he does on this UCLA team. That's not to say this UCLA team doesn't have exciting players. And, one guy I point to would be Quasi Gilmore on the wide receiver core. I think he's set for a big year. I had a feature come out today on him. You can find online. And I think that Nico, the expectation is for him to be good, and he needs to be great. And then when you add the national media aspect to it, people are going to be talking about Nico all year long. I promise you, when an ESPN or The Athletic is coming to the Rose Bowl to watch Nico play, it's because they want to keep tabs on him and see how he's going to be playing. So it's not necessarily a UCLA story at the end of the day. It's how is Nico leading UCLA in 2025? So for UCLA fans, they need him to be good. They need him to be good because they want to root for him. But for the team to succeed, he needs to be great in my eyes. When you're a highly touted quarterback like that, you have to back up the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting. And you mentioned Quasi Gilmore, and I think he's going to be one of the top guys for UCLA this season. But you're replacing a lot at the skill positions. Your top rusher, 4 of your top 5 pass catchers. What is sort of the outlook, for those position groups, wide receiver, running back, tight end, because you have to replace a lot.
Yeah, so I'll start with tight end for a second. Let's go back to April 2024, spring practices. Hudson Habermel tears his ACL on the field. It was one of the more gruesome injuries reporters have seen. It was right in front of the reporters as well. So it was just a really painful experience to watch. And this guy was kind of got onto the scene in 2022. He's a 6'7" tight end. He's more of a pass catcher than he really is a blocker. And then in 2023, he had a breakout game. He scored 2 touchdowns against USC. If that's a way to endear yourself to the UCLA community, I don't know what is. And then he tears his ACL in 2024, so he was out all last year. Fun fact about him: he has 3 degrees at UCLA and 2 of them are master's degrees. I mean, this
Holy
guy's taking using the time at UCLA to his advantage as he should.
cow.
But now he's replacing Maliki Matavao, who was the top tight end of last year, and Hudson immediately jumps in as tight end number 1 and one of the top targets for Nico on the field. So that's just tight end wise. I think UCLA, if out of all the skill positions, that's the most sure I think they are. It's Hudson is going to be a guy they are trying to go to often because he's got the height and the ability to make big plays. On the rest of the tight end group, you got Jack Peterson, Jake Renda is a transfer from Pittsburgh, and then 2 freshmen, Noah Fox Flores, and there's another freshman that might get into the Dylan Sims might get into a few games as well. But Tino Sunseri has made it clear he wants to use all those guys. Jack Peterson is more of a fullback type tight end blocker, takes the ball, runs. Last year he was listed as a fullback under Eric Bieniemy, so they've futzed with him a little bit in the past. But Hudson Habermel, I would point to as in the skill positions, one of the guys you got to get to the ball to if you want to score. Gotcha. I'll go running back next. They're going to play 4 running backs, and DeShaun Foster was very clear about it. He said it's the most depth they've ever had at running back since he's been there. Since he was a coach, and he's been there almost a decade now. So I mean, he's been around the program a lot. So he said he's Javian Thomas, for example, is going to be a guy, Cal transfer. He was their leading rusher more than Jaden Ott last year. And in the Cal community, they seem to be more upset about Javian Thomas leaving than Jaden Ott. Of course, expectations change at the end of the day. And Jaden Ott didn't have such a great end to his time with the Golden Bears, but Javian Thomas is nicknamed the Jet, and he's a big guy, but he's fast. I mean, when I say this guy's built, he is quite built. Then the other guy that's going to be kind of probably the running back too is Jalen Berger, a transfer that came in last year. He didn't get a full spring with UCLA, so you could tell he was kind of it took him a while to get acclimated, and by the end of the year, he was leading rusher a few of those games. So that's a guy that they want to get more. Probably is more of a elusive cutting back. Javian Thomas is kind of a break, big runs, wide open guy. And they have 2 other guys. Anthony Frias is a 5'11", like 220 running back, but he's more of a fullback, power back option. Probably see him on 3rd down, get the first or on goal line scenarios. And then a guy that was with Utah last year, might be one of the more talked about guys all of UCLA camp, was Anthony Woods. Season-ending injury. With Utah last year, transfers out. But before he was at Utah, the guy was one of the more prolific running backs in FCS with Idaho. And Javian Thomas was telling us during Costa Mesa camp that Anthony Woods might be rivaling him for the fastest guy on the team. It seems like a guy that DeShaun Foster wants to get in games. Tino Sunseri probably wants to get in games. And so Anthony Woods is a guy that really can make plays. And when we were watching at the Rose Bowl this last weekend, they had a little walkthrough, 50-minute shindig, I would say. All 4 backs were running with the first team. They were flipping them in and out. So I think expect all 4 to get playing time. So and then wide receivers, I talked about Quasi Gilmore for a second. I think he's clear wide receiver 1. I mean, he's a freshman last year, sophomore this year. I mean, he's a guy that he said he was going to be the best wide receiver in the nation. Like he's not afraid to say how he feels.
Confidence.
Very confident. And if you ask any of his coaches, I talked to his high school coach last week, and he's like, yeah, it's not surprising. This guy plays, he backs up what he says. So I think it's a guy that you're going to see have a breakout year, especially with Nico targeting him a lot. When they got off the bus in Costa Mesa, Nico and Quasi were walking side by side every single time. So it's clear that they already have a bond. And when quarterbacks and wide receivers have that bond, even if there's other wide receivers on the field, I think Nico is going to try and get him the ball. Another former Utah guy came in from Cal for UCLA, Mikey Matthews, is due probably to play a ton. Definitely UCLA's smallest wide receiver. But again, I mean, Nico has been targeting him a lot in practice from what we've seen, the short little plays that we've seen. Mikey Matthews is getting the ball a lot. He's also going to be a kick and punt return option for UCLA. And then tight end, the rounding out the room, there's a Xavier Staples. He was a freshman last year. He hasn't played all that much, but he's one of the bigger wide receivers they have. He's 6'3". Jaden Wilson, 6'4" from Arkansas, and then Titus. I'm not going to butcher his last name. I have it written out, the pronunciation, but Titus has been on the team for a few years, even as long as Dorian Thompson-Robinson was still the quarterback. He had a injury waiver year, so he's back for one more year. He's really talented. He's a really nifty wide receiver, and I think they're going to get him the ball a lot just because he gets open. He finds a way every single time. So that's kind of how I look at that skill set group. The guys I would point out to you guys, Javian Thomas and Quasi Gilmer, are going to be big on if this team's going to be good. And then Hudson Habermel, I think he's just a fantastic tight end. Really happy he's healthy. He's shared so many different difficult stories about his rehab process, and it's hard not to root for a guy who had to deal with injuries like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think Utah fans know that very well, and so yeah, that's interesting to hear about Anthony Woods. He came to Utah last year with similar expectations in terms of him, hopefully turning out to be a guy, and then after a few weeks on campus, they find out he's got a bad knee, and so he missed the year, which was disappointing. I think there was a lot of excitement around him, so it'll be interesting to see what he actually looks like. And then obviously Mikey Matthews, who transferred after his freshman season. I think Utah fans have a good idea of what he brings to the table, and that'll be an interesting matchup to say the least. So let's talk the big uglies now. UCLA's offensive line. I would be curious, a lot of changes to this group from last year. Who do you sort of expect to start across the line, and what are sort of what's the vibe around this unit specifically?
I mean, I think they're a very confident bunch. I think you have to when you're an offensive line. Andy Kwan, the offensive line coach, is someone that all these guys swear by. It's one thing that he's been recruiting his ass off as well. So, I think it's easy to be a positive coach when you're doing well on both aspects of your job.
Yeah.
But they've made a big deal on being a lot more physical. The guys are a lot bigger this year. I think they're more nimble too. I mean, the way they've been moving and the way they've talked about the way Andy Kwan keeps them accountable and makes them work hard. They've really liked Andy Kwan as their coach, and I just wanted to give a shout out to that aspect of it, because I think it's important for this group if they do take that next step. Then again, this has got to be one of the more inexperienced offensive lines UCLA's put together in a long time. I think it's just difficult to figure out what the best five is going to be. I think the surefire two guys that are going to be in there every week if they're healthy, Julian Armella, a Florida State transfer, played mainly on special teams for Florida State, but he was a really highly touted prospect when he was in high school. He's going to slot in at right guard, and then Garrett DiGiorgio is the only returning starter that's likely to be in that starting offensive line group at right tackle. Yeah. But DiGiorgio also can flip to left tackle if needed. So all these guys, they made a big deal about having them play multiple positions during the fall, so they're ready to kind of jump in wherever necessary. Sam Yoon, who was the starting center for most of the games last season, seems to have lost his spot to Oluwafunto Akinshilo, a guy who has not really played a ton, but the coaches are talking nonstop about the effort he's put in to kind of earn this. Again, they haven't named a starting offensive line, so technically he's not necessarily the starting center yet, but the Rose Bowl this last weekend, he was doing the snapping drills with Nico. So that kind of tips you off who's the starting center. It's going to be Akinshilo. And then left tackle and left guard are kind of the question marks. I mean, I think left tackle is going to be Cortland Ford, who next to DiGiorgio probably started the most in his college football career. He started a fair bit for USC the first 3 years of his college career, and then it's kind of jumped around. He went to Kentucky and really did not play at Kentucky all that much, but he's a big guy. You can tell he's a veteran. He looks like an NFL veteran at this point. He might be the age of an NFL veteran at this rate. So he's a guy that's going to slot in there. Ruben Anije, we thought was going to be a starting potentially starting tackle or guard, and he's had a on and off. He sat out a few practices during the fall. He's probably someone that's going to play a bit, but might not be a starter. And then left guard is a redshirt freshman named Eugene Brooks. He's only 6'3". He's the shortest of the bunch, but he's 340 pounds. He's a big guy. And I was talking to Garrett DiGiorgio today at media availability, and he was swearing by Eugene Brooks and the effort he's put in, the quick development to get him ready for a season. He's like Garrett was saying, if anyone deserves to start, it's him, and he's going to be playing regardless. So those are the 5 guys I would say are the best. There's another guy, Katie Arnold. He got some right guard minutes during fall camp. If he came out at right guard or left guard, I would not be surprised. I mean, they're really making it. DeShaun says he has a starting 5, but I feel like every single time we go to fall camp, we see different guys in that first team group. So who knows at the end of the day, but I think they just need to, the team's make or break with offensive line, as most college football teams are. And in past years, that's where UCLA has really struggled. So I think there's optimism, but it's also like if the running game is really not working, it's going to force Nico to do a lot more, and then you're going to have a lot of issues. So I think there's optimism. Andy Kwan, I think people are really excited about what he brings coaching table. Last year they had Juan Castillo, a very NFL-like mid-60s coach. Andy Kwan's a young guy. It's his second college football job. So I think there's an excitement with offensive line, but it really is a make or break position.
Gotcha. All right, let's switch to the other side of the ball. Coach Malo actually did a really good job coordinating a defense last year, pretty tough defense, one of the top defenses against the run. And I guess with that UCLA lost from last year's defense, a number of guys went to the NFL. How big is the task in front of him this season to maintain that level despite all of those losses?
Oh, it's an incredibly hard task. I mean, Carson Schlesinger, Kane Medrano, Femi Oladejo, Jay Toia. I mean, those are the 4 guys that I would point to as the most important players on defense for UCLA, and they're all gone. And then even Ali Cajo, who's a linebacker last year. I mean, he made an NFL roster today. I mean, these guys were really important to the identity of the defense. Luckily, on the defensive line, they returned Gary Smith III and Keanu Williams, who were out with season-ending injuries and supposed to start last year. Siale Tupake, who played a lot of minutes at defensive tackle last year, was supposed to be a backup and was kind of forced into that position. So now they have a few more defensive line guys. AJ Fuimiano is another one of those guys that people really like. And then I was talking to Gary Smith today. Ashton Sanders is a transfer, and people really like him and what he's brought to the table so far. So I think on defensive tackle, they need to stay healthy because, if you ask me, it's really unlikely 2 guys coming off of season-ending injuries are going to be in there every week or be able to play enough. These guys, they're big guys. It takes a little bit more for them to rehab and get ready and back into these things. So defensive line is a little wishy-washy in that way. I think the depth is not where they would want it to be. They took a transfer in the fall, Jalen Hargrove from Rice. I think they were just a little worried about the bodies they have, just to have a guy available to go and play. I think they needed that. And then I think and the edges and the linebackers, I think there's a reason to be confident, but it's a lot of unknowns. The linebackers, outside linebackers at least, are a little more known. They're all John Vaughns is a guy that's been on the team forever. He used to be a baseball and football double multi-sport athlete. This is the first year he's been all the way on football. It's probably the sport he has a pro career at, even though he's a big home run hitter in baseball team. But he's gonna be their starting line. He's gonna be probably in at every rep. I mean, DeShaun Foster said the 2 most important guys to the defense are Gary Smith and John Vaughns, and you can see why. They're veterans. They bring a lot of energy. John Vaughns is a guy that's kind of make or break in that linebacker core. Isaiah Chisholm is a Oregon State transfer, second on the team for the Beavers last year in tackles. That's a guy that's going to be playing a lot. And then Jalen Woods is another returner, took a big step last year that I think they want him to get more reps and get more repetition. People really like him. Freshman last year, now sophomore or redshirt freshman, can't remember how he's listed. Donovan Palat is another guy that people have been screaming about. They really like what he can bring, really fast, quick. He's got a lot of skills. He's got a great skill set that I think Coach Malloy wants to use. And then on the edge, I mean, it's really a question mark. Anthony Jones is a Michigan State transfer. Keyshawn Bennett is a Michigan transfer. And then they've got 2 freshmen, Scott Taylor and Juju Walls, that, who knows what they're going to look like. I mean, we've seen so little of it in practice, and I'd like to say that they're gonna showcase things, but against a Utah offensive line, a group that is not necessarily used to playing together yet or know how things are going to mesh. There's a reason why, in the best way, sometimes players need a new look and, a new place to play. There's a reason these guys are transferring out of big programs. It's because they might not necessarily fit in a program that's that size. So I am curious to see how those guys kick on. Anthony Jones did have a few sacks last year for Michigan State, so I don't want to necessarily write him off. But in those groups, they really do need to show up or put up, because it's just there's you're losing so much talent. You need a new Carson Schwessinger to show up almost, and that was a walk-on linebacker to a NFL draft pick, maybe one of the already more important defensive players on the Cleveland Browns.
Man, that's a lot. That's a lot on the defensive side of the ball, but Coach Malo, man, that impressed me. Doing a deeper dive into UCLA and what they did last year, really impressive job by him. And I'm super curious to see what that defense looks like, what it looks like on Saturday. So we'll get you out of here with this last one, Benjamin. Just Utah, UCLA. What's your prediction? What do you think? How do you think the game is going to play out?
It's interesting. I think all but one UCLA beat writer or analyst or recruiting site has UCLA winning this game at home. I'm not so confident. I'd like to say that UCLA wins this first game. I think there's reason to be excited. Nico, first game, you want to see him put UCLA on a pedestal already. I mean, I think that's the goal for UCLA. Nico has a great game. He could still have a great game and get attention, but I think UCLA really badly needs this victory. I think UNLV is kind of a trap game next week, even though UNLV didn't have a great first game. I think you do need to win this first game. However, the Utah offensive line scares me a little bit for UCLA. I don't know how they're going to, they said they're going to be comfortable rushing only 4. I don't think they are going to be comfortable rushing 4. And I think it's going to let, is it Dampier or Dampier?
Dampier. Yep.
Dampier. I think he's such a mobile quarterback. He's going to make them look a little silly, I think, at times during this game. It's going to be difficult for, I think, the pass rush to kind of get moving. However, I think it's going to be a close game. I think I have Utah probably by 1 score, whether that's a touchdown or a field goal, who knows. But I think I don't feel very confident about the fan base being there for this game. You have to remember that UCLA is not even in session yet. The basketball team is still in its summer practices. They're not even in their summer break yet. So I think that's kind of how you have to view it right now. There's no students on campus. It's going to be hopefully a good atmosphere. I'm thinking maybe between 40 and 50,000. I think a lot of those people are going to be from Utah. So, at least it's not at Rice-Eccles Stadium. So it's not going to be a very rambunctious crowd, maybe, but if UCLA was in Utah, I would say they're definitely losing this game. I think it's still going to be close. I want to get that clear, but it's an important game in 2 ways. If UCLA doesn't win, Nico really needs to show up. If they lose and Nico does not play very well, I think people are going to sour very quickly. So I think UCLA just needs to see a good performance from the quarterback. Hope maybe they do take a victory. But I have Utah winning probably by 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be a really competitive matchup. Obviously, both programs, are in desperate need of a win, right? Utah needs a win to get things going after a tough year last year. UCLA in the same boat. So this is going to be a tough one. Both teams are going to want it. I think it's going to be close. I think similarly, it's going to be a 1-score game. I'm thinking something like 30-24, 30-27, something like that. But I think I think Utah with Devin Dampier, the experience that he has, in the offense, that's just such an interesting dynamic, with Iamaleava and Sunseri in that offense. Just really fascinated, but I really like this matchup. I know a lot of Utah fans are going to be traveling down there. You say LA and, Disney and all those things. It's everything. For me, Lupe's Tacos, so excited to get down there again.
And they were all in my mentions today, so that's how I know they're coming, because if it's game week, then Utah fans are in my mentions. So I know they're coming.
It's going to be a good time. Benjamin, I'm excited to see you down there and looking forward to a great matchup, man. Thanks for hopping on again. Great stuff. And we'll have to get you on sometime down the road, maybe, hopefully, gymnastics, basketball. I don't know. We'll figure something out, but we'd love to get you on again sometime down the road, man.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me, Steve.